Efendim hepiniz saygıyla selamlarım. Hoş geldiniz, sefalar getirdiniz. Tabii üçüncü günümüz bugün artık.
هو اليوم الثالث.
We've started to get a bit tired, exhausted, but without tiring you too much, I would like to talk about an issue called the internet addiction. So first of all, I would like to talk about certain facts about internet addiction. So when it comes to internet addiction, since 2005, I've been working on this topic. We as a Turkish Green Crescent a society, we've been focusing on internet addiction. As you all know, the Turkish Green Crescent has been focusing on 5 types of addictions. One is drug addiction, and then alcohol, cigarettes, gambling, and internet addiction. So here, when it comes to internet addiction and gambling addiction, amongst these 5 addictions, these 2 are important. Since 2010, we've been concentrating on these because we divide addictions into 2. First is the chemical addictions, and the second one is the active addictions, behavioral addictions. And in general, when we say addiction, mostly chemical addiction comes to our mind, like the drug addiction, alcohol addiction, or else tobacco addiction. But when it comes to behavioral addictions, they are not considered as much. They are disregarded. So in this respect, there is an important information that we have. When it comes to gambling addiction in the world, the first article was written in the 19th century. However, in 1983, actually, it entered into the DSM list. So there is this addiction, and many people suffer from it, and it was discovered 100 years ago. But until 1983, gambling was not regarded as an addiction and as a disease, illness. So we see a double standard here, as if chemical addiction is dangerous, but that doesn't go the same for behavioral addiction. I go to many seminars when it comes to internet addiction. When I go to those seminars, the ones invited, they make this joke. They say that we are also internet addicts. But in none of the seminars, I haven't heard a joke that I am a heroin addict. But when we go to other types of addiction seminars, they say that they are internet addicts. So I'd been to another seminar recently. It was to do with addiction, and I, in that seminar, said that if your child stays in a room for a longer period of time, if his self-care capability is been deteriorating, if there is a sharp decline in his academic success, or as if he started stealing money, he could be developing an addiction. So I said, be cautious. And a mother came up to me and said that my son has all the traits that you have mentioned. He brought me. She brought him to me, and he was a gambling addict on the internet. Actually, he was stealing money from his father, and his academic success had declined. His self-care had deteriorated. So just like all the traits that you see in a classical drug addict, you also have these symptoms in an internet addict or as a gambling addict. And I said that I have to say this to your parent. I said that your child is not a drug addict but an internet addict. And her eyes lit up, and she said, thanks to God. So why are you praying to God? So I asked. He would improve, he would recover, so he said, if he starts working or else if he goes to university. But no, when we look at the behavioral addictions, their treatment is much difficult because it's much harder for the addicted to confess, to accept that he's actually addicted. And the number of people working in this field is less in number. There are not many researchers. And the normal and abnormal zones do intersect with each other highly. So when it comes to defining an internet addict, for instance, it is really difficult for us to come with a clear definition. There are 2 nice news. So, as of today, both the East and the West of the world, they suffer from internet addiction. They have accepted that there is an internet addiction and they have to work on it. The World Health Organization, for the last 3 years, have been carrying out seminars in different countries when it comes to internet and gambling addiction. In December this year, we're going to be hosting the very seminar of the World Health Organization, and we will have a 2-day workshop bringing together the experts in this field. And following that, we are going to be holding the Congress, 4th Technology Addiction Congress. And from a World Health Organization point of view, whereas from the for the western part of the world, there is an awareness. The Islamic Development Bank carried out their yearly meeting, and I have presented the Green Crescent in that meeting. And I delivered a presentation on youth and internet addiction. Looking at the Islamic countries, there is awareness going on, and they want to do something. However, when we look at the initiatives carried out around the globe, we see that the awareness is not that high. Yes, technology is advancing, but the studies following that technological addiction is not advanced. Both in terms of prevention and treatment, we have taken a long step in Turkey, and you can find our latest achievements and activities in the latest book which we have printed. Okay, let me come to technology addiction. We call it technology addiction because now we face such a generation. These kids, once they are born, the moment they are born, they are surrounded with technology, internet, their mobile phone. They see these as their limbs, actually, their hands and their arms. There is a video, actually, which I want to show. Yeah, this is real, actually, but this is the video version. I would like to show the video version of this scene. This is the live version of this picture. They give iPad to a child who doesn't even know how to walk. He knows the system to swipe, to rotate. When you give the same magazine to the child, he tries to magnify the visuals on it. He tries to click on the pages. And he's very sure that the system works as such. He tries to open the magazine with his fingers. He doesn't know how to speak. So he is very sure that the system works like that or opens up like that. And he's not suspicious of the system, but he checks whether his finger is working or not. The system does not work, so he says, probably the problem is to do with my fingers. So this is a generation as such. We're facing such a generation. So, as long as we do not give a serious guidance on internet addiction, our children, our youngsters do face a major risk. So what is the reason for this addiction to be widespread? Not only kids, youth, but also this goes the same for adults. For instance, both our Congress and our work area, when we named as technology addiction, we had a major discussion, actually, because the world causes internet addiction. But the issue is not only internet addiction, because mobile phone and television is also involved in this issue. So when we say technology addiction, all around the globe, there are two things that comes to mind. First, internet, and second, the youth. However, when we say technology addiction, we do not only try to emphasize the internet, but we try to include television as well. Not only kids, but parents are involved in this issue, because parents set a better example, unfortunately. For instance, parents bring in their kids to me. They say that this child is internet addicted. I ask what they do, and they explain. He comes in the evening, he is in front of the computer until he goes to bed. Okay, so what could he do? Rather than using the internet, he could be watching TV with us, so the parents say. It's the same with the fathers. They also do that. The father is a TV addict. And so one of our fundamental problem is that in the world there are many people, whether they are kids, young, or as adults, there is a screen addiction problem. This involves internet, mobile phone, television, and in Turkey it is really classical that people go to grocery stores. There is a TV in the corner of the grocery store, for instance, and until by their the biscuits or as a loaf of bread, they stare into the screen. And so we've got a screen problem, and the parents set a bad role model. And the internet, of course, it is attractive, and this triggers us to lose the concept of time. We've got Facebook as well, and many things. We learn it without spending effort. You prepare your own farm, you have your own farm on the internet, and without changing even your room or else the things that you wear, the things that you use, you plot a farm on the internet, however. So all the families from A to Z can become technology addicts, as you see in this caricature. So this is a problem which influences our entire life. So there are two types of addiction: chemical and behavioral addiction. When it comes to behavioral addiction, its rate of widespreading is increasing each day. And the system is the same, actually. So when it comes to drug addiction, the rewarding system, as it is deteriorated, when it comes to behavioral addiction, the same rewarding system is deteriorated, and they face the same losses in life. So what are behavioral addictions? Internet and technology addiction, gambling addiction, sexual addiction, shopping addiction, sports addiction, and especially in countries like Japan, job addiction and game addiction. These are the behavioral addictions that are encountered the most frequently in the literature. On the internet, what do we have? There are two types of internet addictions. First is the general internet addiction, which means that a person continuously having the need to log on to the internet and cannot have a spare time. And a child, for instance, said that if you leave your mobile phone aside, then what do? I pick it up again. So he responds on the Twitter, and they asked the question to university students during a research carried out in Turkey: if you were to forget your mobile phone, how would you feel? I would feel as if I have lost my hand in my home. So it's become that indispensable for us. And so there is this addiction called the unique, specific internet addiction, using internet continuously for a certain reason. First is game addiction, gambling addiction, sex addiction, shopping addiction, and video addiction. Well, it is discussed whether there is work or sports. There is this thing called sport, especially in countries like Southern Korea. It is really widespread. So they actually, these are people who use game a lot, who work game who play games a lot, and they are hired, actually. So for instance, they develop muscles just like the footballers. They harm their leg muscle. The ones who play in computer games, they develop their arm muscle, and they are proud of it, actually. So what should we do in order to prevent this issue? Without defining what internet addiction is, without defining the treatment processes, first of all, we have to focus on prevention, and there are many reasons to that. The first is that in the society, what we see in the society is not internet addiction. Everybody says that they are internet addicted, but not fully, because addiction is regarded in three stages. First is usage, the second one is abuse, and the third one is addiction. And first is usage, using internet in a way that doesn't harm themselves. When it comes to bad usage, abuse, misusage, then it is used in a way that would harm people's lives. And it takes place in 2 times and 5 dimensions. And if it hampers this physical and social, psychological, or as mental or as moral development of a person, if it retards, then that is an abuse, a misuse, which means that if for long hours you use internet and physically your health deteriorates, or else your posture, for instance, or else you suffer from hand muscle pain, and For instance, people at the age of 20, they suffer from rheumatism because they have been sitting like this for years. And this is body deterioration, or else psychologically, if they are retarded, like when it comes to recognizing themselves, determining their targets, doing plans for life, defining their emotions, if these capabilities have started declining, then there is a deterioration, or else if their social relations are hampered, then this is a deterioration, or else if their social and intelligent capabilities hampered, then there is a deterioration. In the second dimension, there is no deterioration, but it also prevents you from progressing, physically speaking. For instance, an adolescent during his body development process, his height increases, or else his muscles develop at that process. But as he doesn't do sports and he stays idle, immobile for hours on end, then there is a physical deterioration, or else that child has to develop his friend circle, social circle, but he doesn't do so. The number of people that he knows decreases each day, and his current relations deteriorate. He is detached from the others. Then there is also misusage here. Or else, morally speaking, for instance, there are certain principles, values, or else right doing that he has to possess, adopt, but he doesn't do so, then there is misusage. In the third place, we can talk about addiction. There are 6 fundamental criteria for addiction. And the first is the specificity. Uh, Salins. When you look at a person from outside, his behavior, his one single behavior overtakes all the rest. For instance, you spend half a day with that guy or else a day, and you realize that this person, most of his life is dominating by a single behavior. And even a person who doesn't know the counterpart that much, then even though he can easily detect it. And for mood modification, internet is used when the person is addicted. For instance, there's a caricature from a country. The guy is an alcohol addict. He continuously drinks. The spouse asks, "Why do you drink? You harm me and you harm yourself." And he says, "I wanted to marry you, but they didn't let me." And no, but we got married. So the spouse says, "We got married," and he says, "But why didn't they give you to me when I first asked to marry you?" This is an excuse, as you see. The couple is married, but still the husband says that they hadn't let the bride to marry him. So this goes the same for other types of addiction. They always find excuses for their addictions. Especially in Turkey, people watch nonsense programs, and as a reason, they say that throughout the day they are really exhausted. In order to discharge their mind, they watch TV. So, for 6 hours, for 4 hours, you try to discharge your mind by watching the same nonsense program, but still it is not discharged. So, what have you done throughout that day that you need that 4 to 6 hours to discharge your mind with that nonsense program? And a person, from time to time, in order to discharge their mind, take their minds off things, they watch TV. However, if this becomes a single behavior, and if the other behaviors are disregarded, and if he cannot discharge his mind in any other way but only by watching TV, then this is an indication that an addiction is developed. And there is a tolerance threshold. Just like drug addiction, internet addiction, the amount of using the internet increases and the time spent out for the rest decreases. So all the behaviors, the responsibilities, they concentrate on that habit, for instance. If the addiction permits, then they take care of their job or else their relations. If not, then they do not. Now, 2 years ago in the States, there were 25,000 people, and in their workplace, They were made redundant because they logged onto their online sexual websites. And they were logging in their home and also in the workplace, and they were warned for 2 times. But even though they knew that they were going to be made redundant and they had received warning, they were not able to stop themselves in logging into sex in websites.
And also withdrawal. There are withdrawal characteristics. What is it? It is when a person feels bad, feels upset when he is not using anymore. In internet use, we don't see any physical withdrawals, but we see psychological withdrawals. For example, if a mother cuts off internet of a very calm child, the child of 15 years old will become like a monster. He will try to hit his father. He will have an angry personality. This means that he has a problem of addiction with internet. And also conflict. Conflict is something that we see very often. It is that the person is in conflict with his immediate environment because he is using this or that factor of addiction. In internet addiction, we are seeing it a lot. And also there's always a relapse. Even if the person quits, he will start again. Mark Twain has a saying. He says that it is easy to stop smoking. I stopped 20 times, he said. Internet addiction is like that. Internet addiction is bad. I have to work for my exams. I have to study for my exams. I stop, then I relapse. To what should we pay attention concerning addiction? When internet addiction is not, now that internet addiction is not that widespread, we should define a frame for our children for a healthy usage. Parents are seeing the abuse of internet, and they forbid internet totally. They take the laptops and tablets from their children, but it's not the right thing to do. Internet is now an indispensable part of our lives. We shouldn't forbid it totally. We should teach them the healthy usage. The healthy usage should be framed, and this is these are the elements of a healthy usage that should be given to the child since the very young age. If not, this child will become an internet addict. The older we are, the more we are subject to internet addiction. So from a very young age, at the school, primary school, maybe, as we are teaching them how to read, how to write, we have to teach them how they will use the internet. Not to teach them how they will go on YouTube, but to teach them how they should use the internet in a healthy way. First of all, it's about responsible use. What does it mean? This means that from his use of internet, nobody should be harmed. At that level, there are a lot of problems. There is cyberbullying. And what is cyberbullying? It's normal bullying, but on the internet. Bullying is a person who is aggressing, harming another person physically, psychologically. When we look at bullying in the neighborhoods, in the schools, a big child will take another child, which is an introvert child. He will ask for money. He will harm him. But even this is very innocent when we compare it to cyberbullying, because A bully should isolate the kid, but internet bullying, you can do it in front of everybody. With normal bullying, the child is safe when he is home, but with internet bullying, he's never safe. He is always subject to bullying. In classical bullying, traditional bullying, a child can move to another neighborhood or change his school. But internet bullying is following the child whenever he goes or she goes. So this is different than traditional bullying. Cyberbullying is a real problem, very important problem. And there are some cases where teenagers committed suicide because of bullying. There was an Australian teenager girl who killed herself because of bullying. We should teach them that because of your usage of internet, nobody should be harmed, especially on social media. There are some young people who are unable to control what they are saying. They are mocking, they are insulting, and this is the first article to teach them responsible use. Second principle should be a safe usage. I shouldn't harm, but I also shouldn't be harmed. This is what we should teach them. I have to choose my password. I have to friend some people and unfriend some other people. I have to choose my privacy settings. We should teach all these points to children. Otherwise, a picture that he's sharing only with one friend can be distributed all around the school. And we also have some very sad cases. There's something called sexting between youngsters. It's a child, a young person who is taking a picture of a certain part of his body and sharing it with another person. For example, a teenager girl has a boyfriend and sends him the picture of one of his intimate body parts, and the boy is sending this picture to everybody in the school, and this girl sees herself as a really as a stigmatized person, and this creates problem. And thirdly, there is this active usage principle. Active usage is about using the internet, but not only for consuming, but also for creating, for producing. I am going to produce also. I am going to create also. I am going to be useful to humanity. Young people are using a lot internet, but what do? They watch videos on YouTube, they play video games, or they chat. And some people have written some things, and they are only consumers. They are not creating anything. They are not producing anything. And this is what we should teach them. Each and every one of us has something to give to human culture and human culture accumulation. There was this video of a child from Africa. He's from a region where there's drought, and as there is no water, it is a big thing to have a bath. And there are some illnesses because of that. 17-year-old child. His friend says, would it be possible to wash without water? And other young people are laughing, and he says, why not? To himself. And he's in a village, and there's one internet cafe, and he has 50 rent of money per week, and he gives this money for 2 hours and a half, and he's doing research and he works on his project, and after a while he finds something a little more developed than wet towels, and he calls this bathing without water, and another company buys his idea, and he has this. He's the first, the youngest person to have a patent in Africa. He didn't see internet only for consumption. He has seen internet to create. He used internet to be active, to create. This is what we should teach young people. Another point is functional use. What is functional use? It's that I have to use internet so that it will facilitate my life. In Turkey, everybody wants to learn English, and all my students are asking to me, to which course should I go to learn English? I tell them, you shouldn't go anywhere. If you go on the internet, there are lots of courses, English courses. You can learn internet. You can learn English on the internet. I'm going to show you a video about a person who is using internet in a functional way. There is this kid of 16-year-old. You know what he did using internet? He learned 20 languages. He's speaking 20 languages.
Or 19 if you don't count English.
İngilizceyi
And different
saymayın,
levels in
19
all of
tane
them.
dil diyor.
And if you have any advice, please let me know. J'aimerais bien commencer en français parce que c'est la langue que je connais le mieux. Après l'anglais, bien sûr. Je me suis mis à apprendre français quand j'avais
Fransızcadan başlıyor, Çince'ye gidiyor, Mandarin dili Arapça'ya gidiyor, İbranice'ye gidiyor, İtalyanca'ya gidiyor, Urduca'ya gidiyor, Türkçe'ye gidiyor. Bir sürü dili, 20 dili teker teker konuşuyor. Benim sayamadığım kadar çok. Böyle ara ara atlaya gidelim. Atlayalım, bir dinleyelim.
We can skip a little and then continue. He goes through 20 languages.
Nicht 8 Wochen und ja, ich finde es toll. Es ist natürlich nicht באמת אני לא חושב שהעברית כל כך מסובכת ומבלבלת. אני גם שמעתי שיש לי מבטא צרפתית.
Arapça da konuşuyor.
אולי זה נכון. אין לי מושק. أهلا بكم.
Bu kalsın.
دلوقتي بالحقيقة أنا في برنامج عربي في جامعة ماريلاند وكل يوم أنا لازم أتكلم عربي من 9 صباحا إلى 5 في المساء. وعشان كده أنا أظن أن لغتي العربية قد تحسن ولا قد تطورت. وبالإضافة إلى ذلك في هذا البرنامج إحنا يعني لازم نتكلم كل أسبوع مع الشخص اللي بيتكلم عربي بالطلاقة. وزميلي اللغة هو عراقي، وبالحقيقة كان عندنا الاجتماع الأول النهارده وتكلمنا ويعني نقاشنا السياسة العربية والحياة في الشرق الأوسط، وتعلمت شوية عبر كلمة عراقية. أتمنى أن يكون باید گفتگو کنم.
Başka bir dile geçti. Bunu da biraz ilerletelim. Bu kalsın.
Günaydın. Herkese merhaba. Bu dilden hoşlanıyorum çünkü ben de Farsça ve Arapça konuşuyorum ve Türkçe çok kelime bu dillerden olamıyor. Ben ama bazen kafamda Türkçe ve Arapça ve Farsça bu dil oluyor. Ben evde kitaplarla Türkçe öğreniyorum.
Yeter bu kadar.
Ve
Çok teşekkürler, sağ olun. Şimdi bak,
Thank you very much. You see, he has studied on the internet and he was able to speak in 20 languages. And when I look at the kids in here, they are using Twitter, they are using social media. If they would use a third of their time for other purposes, they would become geniuses. Internet is really sometimes an obstacle in front of our kids for their own development. The other day I read in a book, in the year 800 or 900, there was a vizier who has done such a thing. He a city, when the enemy is entering a city, he is first of all burning the library. He has created, with 400 camels, he has created an ambulant library. And camels were traveling, 400 camels were traveling with their books on their backs. So this is what has been created. Now we can have in a flash disk more than all those books that were carried by 400 camels. We advance, we have more and more information, but we know less and less. This is why we should teach our kids functional usage. And also there is useful usage. What is useful usage? This is that the child should see what would be useful for him and what is not useful. What do I mean by that? Very quick. He can learn to write very quickly. He can have shortcuts. He can learn all the applications and programs that are very quick so that he will finish his job on the internet very quickly and he will go back to his real life. Also, environmentalist usage is very important. And each word that we are searching on Google are consuming energy in the world. It's exactly the same thing as we don't let the water we don't leave the tap open. We don't leave the water open. We are closing it. We are shutting it. So we should shut also internet. When you search on the internet something on Google, it is the same energy that is consumed as when you are cooking an egg. So if we look from an environmentalist, from a green point of view, when you use internet for nothing, you are really harming our planet. Also, there is honest usage. What is honest usage? You should respect copyrights. You shouldn't steal people's programs, people's works. And also there are problems for the honest usage. Healthy usage is that when we are using the internet, we should pay attention to our physical body and physical health. I have a video which is called How To.
Bir de ne kadar düzgün kullanırsak kullanalım.
And even if we use internet in a very good fashion, we have a time limitation. Every half an hour we should move.
Burada babaların çok yaptığı bir hatayı.
Here there is some mistake that fathers are doing. The father is saying you are using too much the computer, and he takes the computer after his child. What is it good? What is good about this video? This is that somebody was correcting the posture of people. We should correct our postures always, and also we should have a limitation. There has to be a time limitation. If we don't have a time limitation, we can't control ourselves. When we have people who come to us with internet addiction, we tell them to write down their usage. Before I ask them how many times you use internet, 2 hours, 3 hours, they say. And when they write down all these hours, they see that they are using internet effectively 9 to 10 hours a day. If we don't have any time limitation, we really can't control ourselves. We have to have this limitation, and also a deliberate use is very important. What is a deliberate use? This is, I go on the internet because I have a reason. What am I going to do? Am I going to hang out just? No. I can't hang out during 5 hours, 10 hours. I have to have a deliberate use, a use for a purpose, and I have to leave the internet if I don't have a deliberate purpose. Otherwise, there is a life that is going on, and we have some harm on our relations, on our bodies, and I would like to show you a video about these damages. There is this video called Disconnect.
Videodan değil.
The sound was not from the video.
Son yapılan
According to the latest researches, social media is making people upset and depressed. There is a life going on around us. In order to catch up with this life, we should use technology, and we shouldn't let technology use us. This is why we should teach our children the right usage, the responsible usage, in order to save our future. Thank you for your patience. I would be happy to answer your questions, of course.
Thank you, sir, for the presentation. I want to ask what advice you will give. Are there features, let's say maybe on a phone, that can be deactivated, that can reduce the addictive use of those phones? Because at times, some of these applications that come in some of the social media always remind us that something is happening. For instance, if somebody is on WhatsApp, anytime a message comes in, there will be a click. There will be a message that will remind, please check me. And that keeps reinforcing our use of that. Is there something that can be done about those areas from your experience that may be helpful so that one will have a deliberate use rather than just a compulsive use of it? Thank you.
Evet, çok haklısınız. Yani bu bir şekilde kendini göstermesi, hatırlatması ve bağımlılığı arttıracak şekilde sesler.
Yes, there are some notifications, all these sounds that are really making people more and more addictive. We have now an application that we are preparing that is encouraging controlled usage and digital dieting in some kind of way. There is this digital dieting, and all the minutes and moments where you are not using your phone, for people who are using a lot, each 8 seconds, 16 seconds, people are looking at their phone or taking their phone. If you can leave it alone for half an hour at first, and then 1 hour, and then 2 hours, it is very good. And so we are trying to develop an application that would give you some advices so that you will be less addicted to your phone.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your nice deliberation on addiction. There are a lot of things you have gone through. My question is, how will you suggest or apply the which part of religion, I mean Islam, you can apply on that, on addiction behavior, so that it can be reduced, or which portion or which part or in which way you will apply the Islamic verse on this portion of the addiction,
Evet.
so that it can be reduced or minimized. Thank you.
Evet. Şimdi çok önemli bir noktaya değindiniz. Biz de konuşacak o kadar çok şey var ki ama çok kısaca söyleyeyim.
There are many things to talk about this, but let me say it briefly. The spiritual, especially the religious beliefs in Islam, is a major factor in order to prevent addictions. And in this respect, our scientific board, we have hired a theologist so that he also gives us information and leads us the way. In terms of internet addiction, religious, what can we say in religious discourse? We haven't discussed this. But in our two congresses, we called two theologists to explain us about the internet fiqh. And there are not many people who are working in this area, but fundamentally, there are two things that the Muslim people know. The first is that our body and our life is only granted to us, and if there are anything that harms our body and our life has been prohibited for us. We cannot harm ourselves, we cannot betray what is granted to us. And the second one is the concept of waste. This is one of our most fundamental concepts. We cannot waste our life, our body, our relations, our energy, and whatever the internet wastes, we have to stand against it. So for that reason, I am not a theologist, but as a Muslim, looking from these 2 points of view, I do believe that we can arrange our relations in the internet. If there are no more questions, I'm going to leave the floor. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Mehmet. I'm a psychiatrist from Malaysia. In most addiction, we have quite clear definition of what is considered pathological, abnormal, or what is considered fairly normal. For example, gambling. Certain society allows gambling, but too much gambling can be addiction. Ganja. Some society consider medically beneficial, but we can live without ganja. Life goes on without ganja. But internet addiction, I find, is very difficult because last time we have reading and writing literacy. Nowadays, in the modern world, we have internet literacy. So how do we justify this internet addiction. Okay, probably the boy just now who had mastered fluent with 20 languages, I would ask, how much time he spent on the internet? How was his relationship with the family, real friends? So this is my question.
Evet, bu da önemli bir soru.
This is also a major question. Well, we've got a few approaches in this respect. One of them is that the internet usage, differentiating between the normal and abnormal, we say that how much does it enrich our lives? How much does it make our lives easier? And how much does it color our lives? If it removes the colors in our lives, if it becomes like a bottleneck, then it becomes like an abnormal thing. So for that reason, again, I would like to underline that we have to do prevention, and then we have to teach right usage so that it is not misused, it is not abused, because misusage and addiction, they are vague. And this about this child who has learned 20 languages, yes, you are right. We sometimes see addicted people, and it's impossible for him to leave the internet. In this respect, there is a concept that we use, which is called positive addiction. This is a thing like, if you want to stay in front of the internet for 10 hours, let it be beneficial for you at least, or else for the mankind, like learn 20 languages, or else find waterless showers, discover, invent it, kind of thing. Yes, they are more detached from real lives, but if they are highly addicted, rather than consuming, we want them to be producers on the internet, so that at least we minimize the loss, the damage. So there is something exceptional with this kid. He actually tried to develop positive addiction. Final question, please.
I'm so glad that you choose the Thai video that you show. This video we always use to promote the atmosphere about the connection between family and atmosphere in the office. We must use the word for this disease is like a goldfish. They call goldfish, and it is like you have connection but alone. Yes, but in realize for Thailand is a limitation of the internet addiction. And what about your advice for our Thai Green Crescent to begin this issue, please?
Şimdi bu da çok önemli bir konu, çok da uzun bir konu.
Well, this is an important topic and a long one actually, but I would like to keep it brief. The internet addiction, tackling it separate from globalization is really difficult. The ones who define globalization say that the globalization is a period where we possess many items but not many people. So the number of people that we have in-depth relation decreases each day. So while tackling internet addiction, we have to concentrate on societal relations and interpersonal relations. Hopefully, if you spare me a longer period of time, the next time I would explain it further on. Societal framework is important in increasing or else decreasing internet addiction. For instance, South Korea is one of the countries with the highest widespreading of internet addiction, and there is an incredible social framework there. And last year's internet addiction meeting of the World Health Organization, we had a representative from Qatar at that meeting. And he was coming to the meeting and sometimes not, and he was not listening 100% the meeting. I asked why he doesn't listen. And he said that in Qatar it is very hot not. We cannot go outside, and we become internet addicted. So as that we are inside always in buildings, it's not bad that we are become internet addicted people, because we cannot do anything outside. In Hong Kong, for instance, the minimum building is 80 floors. It's impossible to breathe. It's impossible to see anyone, and everywhere is full of buildings, and everybody acts quickly, moves quickly, like smiling and interacting with people is impossible in such a context. So there are social dynamics that increase or else decrease internet addiction. So we have to do certain things in order to change the social dynamics. For instance, in Turkey, we are eager to start a new initiative, which is we want to come up with a project called Let Schools Become Lives. So schools, they exist in each district. They've got their own facilities, classrooms, and in a city life where there are all these buildings, gardens, schools, areas, it's difficult to find them so that young people spend time. So at least after the schooling hours, let's keep the schools open so that young people use their classrooms or else their gardens until the late hours of the evening and spend time together. So, because if they cannot spend time together, no matter how much you increase the awareness of parents, a child going from school to home, in between those four walls, there is nothing that he can do but log on to the internet. So we have to come up with opportunities in order to enrich that kid's life. If that is not the case, if we cannot prepare the social foundation, awareness and